do you test colours? You test them for tones, you test them for the amount of water that you've got in it to make it lighter, or you want more pigment to make it darker. You also test for colours. You might even be testing for warmth. This is a warm red and this is a cool red. So there's lots of reasons why you might want to test a colour, but there's lots of ways that you can do it where you'll get a much more successful test than others. For one thing, you can't test on garbagey paper. So I've got a piece of reflex paper here, and if I test aureolin on this, it soon sort of bleeds out, fades out. If I test the aureolin on this, I get a much stronger result. It's clean and clear because that water and the pigment is sitting on top of the paper and not soaking in. So the first rule of testing is to test on real watercolour paper. You can use the back of old paintings, you can tear up old paintings into 1/16, that's something like this size, and bring them with you. And I like to use a separate piece of paper so that I can use my test and put it next to my subject rather than having it in the margin. Some people like to have theirs in the margin, and that's fine too, but I find that a bit distracting. Students often tell me that they have tested it and they show me their tests. So let's try this test in burnt sienna. They tell me they've tested it. There's my test, and that they thought that was right, and for some reason it hasn't looked right on their page. That looks quite different. This looks much darker. Well, to test a paint properly, you need to give the paint enough space to move. So you need to test a paint by giving it a couple of centimetres long and at least a full brush stroke wide. That way you give the paint enough space to move around and eventually settle in one place. By painting a small little narrow streak like this, like a little narrow test, it looks a lot more contrasty against the strong white of your paper, and often will give you the impression that it's much darker than it is. So give your paint a nice strong brush stroke, plenty big enough for it to settle so that it's not puddled up. You know, these little tiny ones, they can get very puddly as well. So a brush stroke like this isn't satisfactory either. Something that's a bit puddly like that, it's too, not sitting down on the paper enough. So paint the brush stroke, then you can paint on your paper. Now if once you paint on the paper you've decided that the colour just isn't right, don't keep painting with it. Stop, see if you can make a bit of a bead on the side to keep working with it. Stop, adjust the colour that you want, test it again, and repair it. Don't keep painting the entire, just because you tested it and you thought it was right. If ultimately you go ahead and it's not right, stop yourself straight away so that you can fix it immediately rather than having to go back when the painting's dry and adding another layer in.